We're already rolling here, so I wanted to welcome everybody to the Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 special meeting for the Kennebunk Select Board. And present at this moment are Frank Paul, Bill Ward, Lisa Pratt, Blake Baldwin. We're also joined by Mike Pardue, Chris Ostreiter, and Joel Downs. I expect Sally will be along momentarily. Courtney's unable to attend, and Shiloh is wending his way back from Texas as we speak. So we'll be a little short-handed once again this evening. So that's the call to order. Really the only agenda item on this meeting. Well, first of all, let me do this. We got a email from Rachel Phipps, who made a very good point about our COVID protocol, and in conversations with Shiloh this morning, we're going to take up the COVID protocol in greater depth at our May 10th meeting, just to make sure that we're all on the same page of the script. But Mike put together a voluntary registration for notification of reported illness. And this is our effort at a voluntary process to do contact tracing, in essence. And Mike, I don't know if you wanted to comment more on that, but
only that we've structured it so that it is for if anyone reports to the town that attended this meeting or tonight afterwards at the workshop that they have come down with an illness, anyone who voluntarily puts their name on this, because certainly you can attend meetings anonymously, we'll be happy to notify. We will only share that we've been notified of an illness. Obviously, we can't identify what that illness was or is or what person that is, but we'd happily be able to let people know so that you can monitor in case you have any symptoms.
so again, this is completely voluntary, and the town is not taking on any additional liability by doing this. Thank you, Rachel, for bringing that up. Rachel, would you like to make a comment?
Hi, Rachel Phipps, and I'll write my name down here. Thanks. Yes, I would. I guess my comment, I'm glad to hear you're going to be taking it up on May 10th. My request in my email that I sent to the full board and the town manager was to actually hold these meetings on Zoom until you had a protocol that was in place. I think that would have been perhaps showed greater precaution for all of us. There's currently not a protocol in place, I gather. I also want to just sometimes you miss emails. I'd like to know who on the board did email me back. I know you did. I think you're the only one. You always tell me you don't speak for the board, so I'm assuming you weren't speaking for the board. Okay, that's what I thought. Right. Yeah, so.
Any comments that I make in an email to you, Rachel, are strictly for myself.
Okay, that's what I assumed, because you've told me that many times. So I guess what I'm here to say is that I sent, I think, a pretty thoughtful and comprehensive email to the full board about something that I take very, very seriously. And frankly, this town has spent a lot of airtime talking about the COVID precautions and planning that you're doing. And I spoke with the town manager on the phone on Friday. He said he'd get back to me. I've not heard a word back from him since. He was going to look into the CDC protocols, which in fact I did, which I included in the email I sent to you. But I have not heard back from anyone on this board in terms of a board response to me with that email. I don't understand that. I'm here. I'm actually missing an important meeting to be here because I needed to have this conversation, so I had to be here to do it. I guess I need to register that I'm very disappointed that, you're now saying that, yes, sign up so that we can contact you, but you knew who was here last week. Their names were signed up. If someone spoke, they were exposed. They were contact, and they needed to be informed by this town. And it would not have been hard to figure out who that was. It was very upsetting, given my family situation, to have learned that, and even today to have to be coming here with my family situation in order to have this conversation with you, and in order to say how disappointed I am that my family was not contacted, was not told that we were a close contact. You didn't need to say who. You didn't even need to say how. I work too. Those are our protocols. But I did not hear anything back from the town manager. I did not hear anything back from the chair of this board. I did not hear anything back officially from any member on this board. And in fact, what I did hear back from Bill Ward, frankly, didn't make any sense to me based on the CDC protocol. I was like, what? I don't even understand this. So I think signing in is a start, as long as what that means is that you'll actually contact people, because last week you knew who was here and no one was contacted. So, and I look forward to the meeting on the 10th. I would really recommend you hold that meeting on Zoom to discuss your protocols for how to make it safe for people to come here and be in person to participate in our government as the highest legislative body of this town.
Thank you. Miriam?
I think I know. Miriam Whitehouse, I just have a very quick question. Would it be easier for you guys, or whoever's going to have to make phone calls if they have to make them, to have a sign up online so that somebody could quickly gather the names and put them in? Just a thought. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think the idea is that if you're here, that's the easiest, is for somebody just to put their name and telephone
Right.
number or email address, and that's the ease of use of this document, is that
Yeah.
now we have a record of who's there
Right.
and an ability to reach out and contact them.
I was just thinking it would save whoever job it is to contact all those people. If they had your email address, they wouldn't have to make 10 phone calls if you happen to have 10 people here. That they could just gather those emails and blind copy everybody. Just an idea.
I do believe on the form, Marion, it offers that you can provide an email if you'd like, and a phone number, both. So either way, whichever you'd like to be contacted. We're also, and Rachel, to your comment, I'm still confirming with CDC. Obviously, contact tracing has been suspended, as we talked about. And a close contact, the definition still remains a 20-minute interaction. And so we're trying to confirm that right now. So I recognize that I told you I'd be back, but I want to be back to you with fact. And so, I'm sorry, 15. 15. Thank you very much.
So we need you at the podium if you want to be heard. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I know this stuff. I work in early child care. I work with 0 to 5-year-olds every day who cannot be vaccinated. I have the most vulnerable population. I go to work every day protecting those little humans. And my ability to go to work is completely reliant on my knowing my status and knowing when I've been exposed. So it's really important. The definition of a close contact has not changed for the last 2 years. It's 15 minutes within 6 feet. And it's over a cumulative period. It's 15 minutes within a 24-hour period. It doesn't have to be 15 minutes straight, right?
I recognize that.
So, right. And just for people to know, John was in this room for 2.5 hours, and he was at this place for more than 20 minutes. Definitively a close contact. Our family was not informed at all
He
about
was
that.
what? I'm sorry. He was where for 20 minutes?
He speaking with one of the board members around other people. Yeah. So anyway, the CDC, I mean, I guess if you want facts, but what I sent to you shows their recommendation and best practice, which is if you know you're positive, inform your close contacts. That's how we keep our community safe. We've been talking about that for the last 2 years.
Yeah, of course, and
There's
I
been a lot of
recognize the onus
resources on
is
it.
on the person who, in this case, tested positive, if that was the case. And so the town's trying to take the added step. Certainly, we want to be able to accommodate the best we can.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
A really nice added step would have been to have this meeting on Zoom tonight. A really nice added step.
Thank you. Leslie?
Leslie Turner-Lunch, hi. I think this is a good time to bring up the hybrid meeting again. I just hope that that is something that is continued to be looked into. The last meeting, it was said that you would need another IT person or another person to manage the Zoom from downstairs. And I'm just curious if there are any staff members, for example, just throwing it out there, the communications person, would they be willing to change their hours during, on days with the meeting so that they could help out with that? Just, thinking outside the box. Hybrid meetings need to happen so that the people who want to be involved in the town government can be. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, Leslie, thank you. John?
Thank you, John Costin. I sincerely do not wish to sound like I am piling on, but there are a couple things that I'd like to surface here. Mr. Pardue, the last thing that you said in response to Rachel is the onus is really on the person who tested positive, but I know that you all knew that that person tested positive. And also, I was not part of the conversation that you had with Rachel, but it was relayed to me, and I presume accurately, that what you stated to her was that the CDC does not require notification of contacts. They merely recommend it and tell people. It's very clearly stated on the website. There is no ambiguity. My sense is that the bar for responsibility that you have drawn is rather low, and I'm a little surprised by that in April of 2022. Technically, no one in this room should be in this room right now, because we all walked past a sign on the door that said, have you been around someone who has experienced COVID symptoms within the last 14 days? And I believe that everyone here was present with someone, at least one person, sounds like more than one, who was a confirmed COVID case last Tuesday night. I feel like the response and the attitude is a little disconnected, and it's surprising in April of 2022 to be at that point. I think that the town has made great expenditures of energy to deal with the transmission of COVID, and here we are at the second in-person meeting of the select board. We had a potential spreading situation, and yet there was no response to no effort to recognize what happened there, to pull back, to go to a safer model. I'm looking around at a room of unmasked people. If that's your personal choice, I don't mean to get in the middle of it, but we need to recognize that, at that meeting last Tuesday night, I think at the peak there were 30, maybe 35 people in here. I believe I was the only person wearing a mask. The town has required masks for the entry into this building for a very long time to reduce the spread of COVID in our community. We know that transmission rates are high, and with the bar set at, we're not required to do that, and even though I know that apparently 2 people in the room last Tuesday night were confirmed COVID cases, and I could identify, I don't mean me personally, I'm speaking the first person for someone else, and I could identify who was in the room. It's not technically my responsibility to notify people. I don't think that cuts it. So, thank you.
Brenda.
I'm sorry to add to this, but I know I'm the oldest person in this room. And I was the oldest person in this room last week. I know, you can ask Chris Osterreiter, he found out how old I was. I'm in a vulnerable population, And for 2 years, I've taken every shot available. I've stayed away from groups, meetings, family, even family holidays, because my family had COVID. And I'm disappointed that I wasn't notified in any way. I don't want this, and I've done everything in my power, including being lonesome on holidays. All of them. Please, please, tomorrow, figure out how to let us know and protect us. I don't want this, and I don't want to be in the hospital. Thank you.
Well, I can assure you, none of us want you to be in the hospital either, Brenda. That would be, we don't require masks in the building, and we haven't for quite some time. Am I right?
That's correct.
You know, it seems as though we have fallen short once again to meet the expectations of a group of people, and all I can do is promise that we'll try a little harder, or a lot harder. I'm tempted to make a motion to adjourn this meeting and postpone the entire evening based on those comments. That's my attitude towards, you know, what I've heard tonight. I think that there's a difference of opinion about how we move forward in light of the fact that this is no longer a pandemic but an endemic, that the COVID is become part of the background noise of our society. And yet, when I was having a conversation today with Shiloh, you know, he suggested that we probably should just stay at remote meetings. Now, when we were in remote meetings, Rachel, you were one of the people who complained the loudest that we were in remote meetings because you couldn't see people's faces. And I get that. I understand. I'm speaking, right? I will get back to you. So I don't know. We can adjourn this meeting and we can move it to another time.
Well, if
Can
I
I
may,
just-
one of the things that I think we definitely need to tackle, because
Your microphone,
time is
your microphone on there, Bill?
Yeah, one of the things that I know we definitely need to tackle is have the discussion about the town manager recruitment. If you want to fold the meetings after that, then I think that's fine.
Well,
But
it would be too late.
okay, well, it's up to
It would
you.
be too late. I mean,
Blake?
we're already in each other's presence, you know, and Shiloh said it best. He said, ultimately, you know, we have to come to a philosophical determination. Are we okay with the knowledge that we are in all likelihood infecting each other on a routine basis in meetings of this kind? Masks are not the answer. You know, it's all about the presence of people together, which happens on a routine basis. And Shiloh's question is a good one. If we are willing to proceed in the face of the knowledge that the BA2 variant is quite a bit more transmissible than Omicron was, which is quite a bit more transmissible than Delta was, then we continue to meet, take whatever precautions we can, and let the chips fall where they may. On the other hand, you know, it may well be that we go back to all Zoom. That's the safest way to do it. There are shortcomings to that model that have been identified and discussed. Leslie, the hybrid model is not possible right now. It just isn't. And that's notwithstanding quite a bit of effort on our part. I tried to explain in the last meeting that we have an analog system that has been added onto with digital bits and pieces, and it just doesn't permit us to host all of the different platforms that we are trying to host. You know, the addition of Zoom essentially is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I wish that it were not the case, but you know, it strongly suggests that what we need to do is invest, make the capital investment like Kenny Bunkport did 2 years ago to rebuild an audio video capability that's all digital, that is built with the knowledge and desire to incorporate different types of technology platforms. So we have a lot of thinking to do. Yes? What, do you mind if I finish my comment, or are you? Oh, okay. Well, then let's hear Brenda, and then we'll hear from you, Rachel.
Nothing is going to make everybody happy, Blake. We know that.
Yep.
People are going to be unhappy. I would like to have known before I walked in the building tonight.
You
I
would've-
would like to have known before I walked in the building tonight that I had been exposed. I did not know.
Understand.
So,
I get that.
But whatever you do, everybody cannot be happy, but do something. Maybe it's post a sign on the door, maybe it's the sign-in sheet, whatever. Do something, and I'm sure you'll come up with a plan that some people are going to gripe about, but
Yep.
do the best you can.
Thank you, Brenda. Sally first, and then we'll go to Rachel.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that not everybody, some people got notified about the positive COVID, but not everybody. And I think that, you know, we've learned from that. We have a really good system that I think will be helpful. We're all here. I'd like to move on and get some of this work done. You know, we're kind of just grinding the wheels right now, and I think that we need to address this manager thing, and I'd like to move forward with that. I don't want to cancel everything.
Okay, very
I think
good.
we need to wear masks if we want to, don't wear them if you don't want to, just like when you go to the grocery store or a restaurant or anything like that, and we need to have this good system to let people know if they've been exposed.
Okay, just two things. Since you name-checked me there, I have been a vocal opponent of not being, having a disembodied voice on Zoom, but the school board and other places allow you to come on as a panelist when you're speaking. So that's what I've really been, I have been saying that it's not good to not know who's present in the room and to not be able to have a visual when you're speaking, both things that are doable on Zoom. And I would certainly support functioning on the hybrid. So this is my brain bow, our kids call it. For a long time, the school board did their meetings here because of our equipment here was better than theirs. It sounds like the school board's equipment is better than ours now because they can do hybrid meetings. Why doesn't the select board, until we figure this out, meet at the school? It's all televised. You got the mics there. It's set up. I've been doing hybrid meetings there for a year. So until you guys get it figured out, meet at the school and do hybrid.
Does the school district post their meetings on town hall streams?
They record us. I don't know.
No,
but
they don't.
They
So that
record 'em.
doesn't work. But thank you for your brain bow.
Well, keep problem solving because
We are.
The school board broadcasts on, I think it's called live stream. It's
then
not
they
town
do.
hall
That's
streams,
what I'm
but
asking.
it's just a different.
Well, that's not town hall streams. That's a different model.
No, but if you can click on.
Live stream is an entirely different. What we're doing with town hall streams is we're broadcasting live and making a recording available for future use.
And that's the same thing. It's just a different platform, but it's the very same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay. Right. I have, my focus is on what we do here. I've seen school board meetings. We'll look into it.
I will send an email
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Lisa.
So I know we're here to talk about the town manager search, but in continuation of this conversation, I think that maybe we need to make that capital investment, and we need to take our select board reserve funds and put out an RFP and make that digital investment so that we can provide hybrid meetings.
Well, we're on Town Hall Stream. We have a contract with them, and that's who we're working with right now. But we certainly are looking for a solution because nobody wants to overlook the opportunity to broaden our participation. That's highly desirable. But it may well be that we go back to Zoom until everyone feels comfortable that we have a way of dealing with this. All right, anyone else on this subject? Okay, moving on. The item for discussion tonight is the town manager search process. At the April 26th meeting, the board discussed issuing a request for proposal for town manager recruitment consulting services. This RFP seeks experienced executive search firms to assist in recruiting applicants for the position of town manager. The timeline for the process was proposed. Release of the RFP on May 4th, assuming that we can come to an agreement this evening. Proposals due at 2:30 p.m. on May 24th. Selection of search consultant by the following week, May 31st. Recruitment from June to August, and a new town manager start between early to mid-October. So that's the game plan. The document that we handed out and that was made available through this agenda, I hold in my hands. It is called Request for Proposals Town Manager Recruitment Consulting Services. I have asked every one of our board members for individual input, and some gave that input to me telephonically. Courtney didn't get to me on her points that I'm aware of. She may have since then, but I'll take a look in a moment. Bill did get back to me, but I think what we ought to do is go around the board and then open it to the public for comment as well. So Frank, any thoughts on the RFP? Okay. Bill, you had a couple.
Okay, so I basically, if we, I'm trying to see if you changed anything.
No.
Okay, oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, this is the...
This is the same as the one that I'm working from?
Yeah.
Okay, so, scope of services, item 2, where it indicates we're going to select community members to obtain information regarding specific issues and opportunities. And how are we making that selection? This was a question that I brought up to you to ascertain how we develop that.
Can you do that again, Bill? Because I'm trying to do several things at once here.
Scope of services.
Do you have your microphone on there?
Yeah, that one doesn't work.
Okay.
Scope of services, which is page 2, item 2, scope of services. Item 2 of that scope of services, where you indicated that to develop a candidate profile, and then it gets to select community members to obtain information regarding specific issues and opportunities. And I remember in our conversation I briefly said I'm not sure how we go about selecting the community members, and so I thought that was one question. Moving
Well,
to
let's address that.
I just thought I was going to hit them all because I only had 4.
Okay, if you want to do it that way, sure.
Yep. Alrighty. Let's go down to. Hang on a second. Oh yeah, you had already addressed the issue of verifying candidates' educational employment. I also mentioned in there that in item 7 on page 3 at the very top of the page, when we look at that, one of the things that's very, very important in our town is union negotiations. And what I was very concerned with is whoever our proposed candidate is, that they have demonstrated capacity to negotiate with unions, and that they've had successful negotiations with unions, not like some other a fairly nearby town that's had a battle for a long time with a fire department contract. So, and that's too important a thing not to be ignored. There was the cover letter, and I think I wanted to have, if this is the cover letter regarding for the agency itself that we're talking about, which is item A, submittal of item A, which is a subsect of item 3. It mentions the cover letter, and I think in there I mentioned that I wanted to see more references of other towns that had utilized that particular service. Mentioned so that we could
Are you talking about references?
Yeah, references of for the agency, and you know what other towns have they worked with?
In there, right?
Is that in there? Because I think there's a mention.
yeah.
There's a mention
reference.
in Part B, firm narrative, which mentions it, but that's very general. And I remember saying to you the other day that was fairly okay. And the last item that I had. Okay, I
It was
asked you a
bullet
question.
point 4.
Yeah, it's page 4, bullet point. I say item 2, evaluative criteria. 1, 2, 3. Bullet point 4, strength of key personnel, completeness of the team. I wanted to have that a little more fleshed out. Those are mine.
Okay, so let's take those in order. I'm sorry, Bill, I still don't understand what your issue is with item 2, section 2.
You were talking about selecting community members to obtain information,
Okay.
and my
Yep.
question is, how do you go about that selection process in order to keep it fair?
And the answer is we don't know right now. That's part of the process.
Well, I just wanted to cue it up.
Yep,
These
thank
are
you,
just-
yep. So it's critically important that we include the public in this process. And how that's done, we're going to take our cues from the recruitment firm, because at least some of the ones that I've already talked to already have a very highly refined process of not only engaging the public, but making sure that there are nights where you can meet the candidate and actually have a give and take with them. So that would be my expectation, is that once the recruitment team is on board, we will be taking their lead in terms of creating a process to include the town. And I believe the word select is because this is not a process that's open to the entire legislative body. This is delegated 100% to the select board to make that decision. That's Article 3, Section 3.06, the very first subsection, delegates to us the right to appoint and remove the town manager and the town attorney. Having said that, as I've said before, we would be foolish not to engage the public, because we want as much stakeholder buy-in to whoever we choose as the next town manager as possible. So the answer is, right now, we're not quite sure how that process would
And that's
work out.
fine. Like I said, I just wanted to get it on the table as to how many we select and how we go about the process to make sure that we're as fair as possible.
Okay, and with respect to references, I think that's included in B, and it's part and parcel of any RFP, the expectation, and all 3 of the proposals that we got in our initial effort to identify possible search firms, all of them included references all of which I've contacted, or at least the majority of the ones that they mentioned I've already contacted.
And again, regarding the actual candidate themselves, I wanted to make, as I brought up before, I wanted to make sure that whatever candidate we look at as part of their vetting process, that person have union negotiating experience.
Yeah, and
That was key to me.
I talked to Mike about that, and Mike has a different point of view on that, and I think he has a good point to make in that regard.
Bill, I think that's a very important concept and background for the selected applicant. I would encourage that you look for that in their issued CV, and that part of the interview process that they go through, you kind of drill down what background they may have in union negotiations. Otherwise, I'm concerned maybe that you might preclude some very qualified candidates. I don't know, but you might. And then because you always have outside resources that you can utilize for contract negotiations if appropriate. So I think in their background through their CV and through the interview process, you'll be able to determine that background in union negotiations or not, and determine whether the candidate hits on enough chords that you want to advance them, knowing there's a backup provision that you could use a contracted service to help them.
That makes sense, Bill?
Yep.
Okay, and then I think that was it. The item 4, the bullet point, Mike, you might want to go over what we're referencing there is their experience with their search process, right?
Right. One of the things I think on that bullet point, Bill, the strength of key personnel, I think as you look at the breadth of the firm that you're considering, you'll look at what that background of that selected group is. It may be an individual consultant with extensive background or a firm that has several people that may be part of this. And so I think if you look at those key personnel and then the completeness of the team, if it's a team, do they have experience in town management? Do they have HR experience? So I think you look and say, what's the best rounded team that we could, employ?
Well, I feel a little better knowing that, because for a while, that particular statement was a little vague to me.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate your input. Lisa?
I didn't have any input, just to speak to Bill's union issues. And I agree with what you're saying, Mike, but can we put it maybe in the background information when we list the type of town and employees and stuff, and just say that we have unions amongst our employees, and not, say that you need negotiation skills, but just list that we have a union or a couple of unions, 3 unions.
Certainly.
Just a thought. But other than that, it looks good. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Sally, I know you did your homework there. I can see the highlighting.
I did, yes. So as far as getting the nitty-gritty as to what type of a candidate we're looking for, that's really not what we're doing tonight.
Right, that's correct.
So we can kind of go into depth as far as education, experience at a later time when we've picked our okay. I think this looks great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Public. Yes, you guys work it out. Arm wrestle. Rochambeau. No? Okay.
Oh, sorry, under B, it says, 4 paper copies of the proposal must be submitted. Proposers are encouraged to avoid the use of
Okay,
synthetic.
so Miriam, where exactly B?
B.
Is it 3B or?
No, it's under the bullets. Oh, I'm sorry, yep.
Got it.
I'm looking at this on a little phone.
I understand. Yep, got it.
Okay, I was just curious, I mean, I really, am thrilled to see you wanting to avoid synthetic report covers, from a sustainability point of view, but I was just curious as to why, if you have 7 board members, you would only want 4 paper copies for your board members to review.
We certainly can ask for more. Quite honestly, in our Paperwork Reduction Act, we were trying to minimize that, because most of the time I think that the board looks at things electronically, but we can certainly ask for 7 or 8.
I think it's kind of the heir and the spare philosophy. John? But thank you, Miriam.
Thanks. I guess I just had one specific question here, and I'm not positive who I'm addressing it to. The author of this document is...
Well, it was a collaboration between Mike, Jerry, and Kathy Nolette.
Okay, great, thanks. So
And Joel, excuse me, and Joel.
all righty. Mike and Joel then. Under number 2, scope of services, jumping down to number 3 on page 3, you have develop an inclusive strategy for implementing the town manager recruitment and identify potential contacts through personal outreach to encourage applicants from diverse backgrounds to apply. And, you know, while I like the sound of that, I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit, because it's not clear to me what it is that you're suggesting we do.
Well, this is at the top of page 3. It says, develop an inclusive strategy for implementing. So in our search, and certainly I've been very encouraged in my conversations with GovHR, not that they are the firm of choice, but they're the ones that I have had the most contact with. They're a woman-owned, woman-founded business operating out of Chicago, the Chicago area, and they do extensive work to ensure that their recruitment process is inclusive, that there is diversity and gender that is contemplated in that process. They attend and are members of the NAACP as an example, and so all of the concerns that we would have about diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice, I think were addressed, and that's what this item is trying to encourage the applicants to address as part of the response to our RFP.
Mike, you look like you want to say more about that, but...
I believe Blake hit on 99% of the chords. I also recognize that in the HR world, there are numerous publications that may reach a very diverse group of potential applicants, and that would be something I think the board would look from the firm to see if they utilize that resource as well.
Okay. And I think that's great. And I suspected that might have been what was there. So if that's the goal, maybe you want to punch it up a little bit. Longtime fans of the school board show will remember that their search RFP had a really punched up EEOC component to it, where they said they were particularly interested in historically underrepresented groups, members of historically underrepresented groups, and I believe they named them. Can anybody fact check me on that? So if that's a goal, and I think it's a laudable one, it's one I support, I'm going to recommend that rather than the kind of vague, diverse backgrounds, that we might want to kind of punch it up, bring it up, say, what kind of diversity are we looking for? I really support that goal of, gender, racial, ethnic, diversity, etc. I think ability, diversity, all should be kind of punched up in this if we're doing it, rather than just saying diverse backgrounds, because I think it's easy to not understand what that means. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, John. Yes, Brenda, please.
I would just piggyback on that. Does the town have an equal opportunity statement? That should probably be included then as a response to what John just said from diverse backgrounds. The town of Kennebunk is an equal opportunity employer, and whatever the rest of it is, I think that should be clear under 2. 2, scope of services, number 3, because the diverse backgrounds is, I think the school board found that falls flat on its face. But anyway, that's a suggestion. I had one other, and I noticed that on page 1, faxed or email proposals will not be accepted, which I think is excellent. But I think someplace in here you might want to mention, and it may only pertain to the selected group, an email, a digital copy be sent as a follow-up, because 7 copies for the board here may not quite be enough. You might want to have something electronically, but not necessarily to share with the community. Everything's done digitally, and that's the way we keep records now. So I would just suggest that the board get one after submittal, or include here 7 paper copies and a digital copy forwarded. Does that make sense to you?
I'm not even sure about the 7 copies. I don't think that's a highly relevant point, but because we have a fancy copier, and we certainly have the ability to make copies, to turn them into PDFs. We do that all the time. So.
Well, at the bottom of page
And I,
3.
frankly, I think a digital copy probably makes sense. I don't,
The only challenge that we run into is the fact that it's a sealed proposal.
Yes.
And so
yes.
that's why we look for these to come in mail, so that we actually have
Absolutely.
observers watching us open.
Absolutely, absolutely. What the bottom of page 3, it says 4 copies, and I think John asked why 4 copies when you have 7 board members, and that's why I said 7, Blake.
Yeah, I
was just-
understand,
just-
but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we could make as many copies of that. Once we receive it, it becomes our public document, so we can.
You can put the cost on them, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And
Okay.
one of the things that I think we're committed to is when we do have documents that are suitable for publication on, that become public documents, that we're going to try and get those up online as quickly as possible for the community to digest and dive into. John, yes, please. John, do you mind?
I just wanted to speak to what John said about the diverse applicants. I agree with you, and I think that, I saw this as sort of a vague way to put it in there, and maybe I saw it and it, stuck out to me, and I was like, that's great that we're including that. But I agree that maybe you want to highlight that, but how do we word it? And this is maybe, is it a legal thing, or do we find an expert? How do we word it without making it tokenism? That's what makes me nervous, saying that, well, we want to make sure we have a black person. We want to make sure we have a, I don't know, whatever it might be. And so it's just, that's a fine line I've always walked, and I'm not sure how we do it correctly. And I'd love to know, and I'm not sure who we consult to do that properly. And so that's just something I'm concerned about.
Well, the vagueness of this is not necessarily a bug. It could be a feature, and that is that it allows us to, in the process of interviewing, we've made it clear that we're interested in that, and by interviewing, we will be able to tease out of these folks what their actual point of view is in that regard. And and to your point, when I was talking to Lori Peterson of GovHR, she said one town literally gave as their search criteria a menu of human beings to mean we want a candidate that is a male American Indian, a female person of Asian background. I mean, they literally listed by gender, by ethnic background, the criteria that they wanted to see in their selection process. And I don't think that's how I would like to approach this. John?
Thanks, and if you don't mind, just before I go to what I set up to say, I'd like to speak to your concern, Lisa, and I think that it's a not uncommon concern, so I think it's a good one to address. The good news, as I understand it, and I want to declare I'm no expert on this, is that there's a lot of really good best practice developed around this. What I do know about this, I know because of having been the spouse of someone who was involved in the recent superintendent search in RSU 21, they hired an additional consultant who brought them up to speed on diversity-informed hiring. And I'm not, pitching or shilling for this particular individual, although I can tell you that everyone who participated was extremely happy with that person and with the process. And you don't have to figure this out on your own. You guys don't have to kind of stake out the philosophical positions like there's, it's 2022, like there's really good best practice in place and people who can advise you on how do we do diversity informed hiring without kind of, sticking our foot in it. So I would highly recommend that the board, seek out some of that assistance. I can provide contact for the individual who RSU 21 used, if you'd like to use that as a point of contact, but certainly there's lots of people doing this. You don't have to go it alone.
Well, we could do that, and it sounds like a good idea, but not to delay this process. We need to move this forward.
Sure, understood, and I'll tell you that they did a kind of parallel track.
Right.
And the person who they used through the RSU 21 process has become a part of the MSMA hiring process for a lot of other districts, because they were like, this is great. Like, we're accustomed to hiring people. Here's a person. I want to be really clear. I'm not like shilling for one person, but here's a person who, really has this down and can say, look, here, here's what we've learned is a good way to approach this, to address these concerns and avoid, potential pitfalls. So it's out there. You don't have to make it up. Now I have to try and remember what I originally wanted to ask. Two questions on just the mechanics of this. The first is, since the winning proposal will be chosen not merely on the basis of cost, though I understand the reasoning for still keeping proposals sealed, the extreme hygiene of not using emailed proposals kind of escapes me, and you don't have to respond to me right here, right now. I just want to float that. My second question is, I haven't seen, or maybe I missed, how this RFP will be publicized and pushed out.
The RFP is already published online. It's in a link in the agenda, so it's on our webpage.
So you are hoping that recruitment firms will find?
Oh, no. I mean.
Yes, when this is approved by the board.
I thought you were talking about the public.
Okay, let's start again.
Yep.
When this is approved by the board, what is the plan for pushing the RFP out to potential firms who might submit proposals?
Okay, Mike?
Certainly on our website, and we know that's very, very contained. We'll be reaching out to other states and using their municipal websites as well. Many times proposal companies will look at those, so we'll reach out to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, obviously. How much further we look, I don't know, but certainly we want to look at the Northeast. I think they have a real understanding of the needs of our area and our region, and probably good candidates that serve our region and maybe beyond.
Thanks, and one more thing just triggered for me while I was up here. Perhaps should be in the RFP that the town does have specified standard selection procedures that apply to the hiring of a town manager, and perhaps incorporate by reference, the town has existing policy which recruiters, should be prepared to address.
So you're talking about Article 4 of the Charter, is that?
I am not. I'm talking about the standard selection procedures in the town personnel policy that has a subsection that applies to the hiring of the town manager.
Okay, understood. Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
well, that's worth taking a look at. Anyone else? Yes, Leslie, welcome.
John's tall. Hi. Thank you. I just would love to read something to you that the RSU used in their search for the superintendent that speaks to more specificity than just diverse backgrounds. Just as an example, and I'll email this to everyone later as well. RSU 21 is an equal opportunity employer. We strive to be welcoming and inclusive community that supports the safety and well-being of all our students, faculty, and staff. Obviously, that would be different. We are committed to implementing programs and practices that support diversity, equity, and inclusion. As part of this commitment, we welcome all applicants. RSU 21 does not discriminate based on race, color, gender, gender identity, orientation, disability, religion, age, national origin, or any other status protected under federal, state, or local law. If you are a person of color, LGBTQ+, disabled, or belong to any protected class, we encourage you to apply. Our diversity strengthens our mission to produce global citizens. So just, obviously it would be, you know, not geared towards school, but that's just
Right.
an example of what we're saying, not
But we're talking about
Singling out.
search firms. We're talking about companies that
right. And I
Yeah.
think if the search firms understand that this is kind of where we're coming from and what we're looking for, rather than just you know, just more specifically than just diverse backgrounds, that would help them in their, you know, kind of format their proposals.
Okay,
Thank you.
We'll take a look at that. Anyone else wish to be heard? Okay, so I think what I've heard is, Bill, you were satisfied with the explanations you got. Lisa, you liked it the way it was, but wanted us to beef up the diversity portion or a statement on that. Sally, you were good. I'm good, although I am mindful of the input that we got concerning, I think we should put our equal opportunity statement in the document to make sure that we lead with what our principles are with respect to that issue. I'm not sure about 4 or 7 copies. I'm not, you know, I don't think that's material. Huh? Yeah. Was there anything else that anyone really thought we should do? We're going to put in a beefed up diversity, equity, inclusion section. I don't think we'll go as far as the school district did, but we'll certainly make an effort to and we will also obviously include that in the interview process once we get.
There was, Blake? Sorry.
Let's let Leslie talk first. Yes?
I just want to point out the district didn't go far. Like, they didn't take it to an extreme. They just were specific. That's all.
Okay. I guess what I'm saying is I think that they're comfortable with their language, and I think we'll do something that's representative of our philosophy as a whole. You know, whatever that turns out to be, but we'll get back on that. Yes, Bill?
It was just a very brief point that when you were recapping, one of the things that John mentioned, which is not a bad thing to think about, and that is to look at the personnel policy regarding town manager hiring. I think that was something that he mentioned. That's probably, as long as we're looking at
That's a good point.
incorporating that we look at that.
We got that. So Mike has a page of notes. What we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to vote, in my opinion, we're going to have to vote to approve the document with the proposed changes. We're just going to have to trust that we're going to make those proposed changes that are satisfactory to this board. I will certainly make every opportunity, or Mike will circulate to all of you as representatives of our friends here in the audience, and but we need to get this rolling. We can't afford to dilly-dally.
Is that a motion? I'll second it.
Well, it's not a very good motion, so dilly-dally I don't think has ever been a part of
we
an
can omit
official
the
town
dilly-dally.
motion, but I would make a motion to approve Yes, John, please. Thank you.
I guess I'm curious why, with some very important changes brought up to a very important document with 4 of 7 select board members here, you wouldn't want to prepare a draft for approval at your next meeting, which I believe is a week from tonight. Like, is the week?
We've already postponed this. We're beyond where we want to be time-wise. I think the board has made it very clear that they're generally satisfied with the RFP as is, with the proposed changes that you made and others made, and we're going to incorporate those, circulate them to the board, and get this thing going.
Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome. Now, that's my point of view. If anyone else disagrees with me.
No, we should have done this a month ago. So.
Okay. So the idea here is that we're going to take the proposed proposal, make changes pursuant to the feedback that we've gotten. It'll be circulated for, last looks, but we are going to try and get this out the door. Well, not tomorrow, but certainly by the end of the week, right? Correct. Okay. So the motion is to issue the RFP with amendments for the town manager recruitment consulting services for proposals presented to the board at their special meeting on May 31st, what?
It'll be May 31st.
I'm sorry, Mike, I'm okay. So we're going to make a motion to issue the RFP as amended by input from the special meeting of May 3rd, 2022 for the town manager recruitment consulting services with proposals. And we're asking for an approval of the document with amendments as suggested by the public and by this board.
Right, second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? None opposed, 2 absent. So we have a approval of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent.
Blake, I believe what that motion is, we captured the motion. I think, obviously, May 31st is the key date where these proposals will be back
Right.
for the selection.
Yep.
I'm not sure of the footnote on the budget piece, so probably a little error there.
Sure.
But the 31st of May is when you'll have these back.
Yep. So again, here's the timeline, so everyone can follow the bouncing ball. We are going to try to release the RFP with changes by Friday. The proposals will be due back on May 24th. That is the responses from the proposed consultants. The selection of certain search consultant will be made by May 31st, so that'll be a 7-day time period within which we will ponder the responses, check references, make phone calls. The recruitment process will take place between June and August, and a new town manager start date is targeted for early to mid-October of 2022. Any questions on that? Questions from the public? Yes, Miriam?
I'm not going to try to find this on my phone again, but in the RFP, the present draft, it talked about interviews. So are you planning during the week between the 24th and the 31st are you planning on the week between the 24th when the proposals are due in and the 31st when you're going to select to actually hold board interviews of the companies?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions, comments? All right, I think we've dealt with that business, and I appreciate the input. We will try to bolster the RFP with the ideas that have been shared with us from the public, as well as a few minor ones from the board. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn before we move into our workshop.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I will second it.
Moved and seconded, all in favor of the The motion to adjourn is approved on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. So, we are already 5 minutes late, but that's a good thing. It's all right. The meeting is being recorded, and we'll just move right into the workshop. The workshop is going to be led by Durward Parkinson, who's sitting behind you, John. Durward, do you want to speak from the podium or to the wonderful table over here to the right? Okay. Make sure you get that microphone up nice and tall there. Okay, you also need to turn it on. Oh, missed. So this is, for those of you who don't know, Durward Parkinson, a very well-known attorney from Bergen Parkinson here in town. He has served as town moderator for I don't know how many years, but a trusted third party to all of us. And he's here to talk us through an educational introduction to a charter revision.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. I saw that on the agenda, or attached to the agenda, was some materials that I'd sent over, and one is a very good article that's on the Maine Municipal website. I'd encourage you to read it. You don't have to read it right this second. In fact, I'd prefer you not. And then there's the statute. It's just all a feature of statute, and so it's pretty intricate. But let's just take it up to 30,000 feet for a second. What is the importance of a charter? The charter is, I think I saw in a case one time that it's an organic document of the town. You know, organic, I'm not sure what that means exactly, but it's comparable to the federal or the state constitution. It's similar to the constitution of the town. Not all towns have a charter. We have something like 490 towns in Maine, and 80 of them have charters. You know, many of these towns are very small, and they have a very rudimentary form of government, but most all the larger towns have a charter. And of course, the town of Kennebunk has a detailed charter, originally adopted in 1984, amended in 2008, amended in 2009, or revised. And I want to talk about that in a second, revised versus amendment. Revised in 2008 and revised in 2009, and then amended on various dates in 2010, 11, 12, and 14. So when I say charter revision, I'm talking about a major change to the charter, a significant change. And that entails then going through the process of appointing a charter commission, and I'll talk about that in a second, versus an amendment. An amendment could be, say, almost like a typographical error, a grammatical thing that needs to be cleaned up. And the amendments can be handled by the selectmen directly with the town meeting vote. But it doesn't require the whole town, the charter process. So, Blake, you said we're talking about probably a charter revision, so we'll stay focused on that. But I just wanted you to, everybody's be on the same page about revision versus amendment. So, what kind of options for town government are there under a charter? A huge number, and there's all sorts of various ones in Maine. If you really are having trouble sleeping, you could Google Maine charters, and about 50 of them will pop up, you know, for up and down the coast, and you can see there's certain similarities to them, and there's certain differences. I'm not saying you have to do that, but it is kind of interesting to see how other towns are doing, because as we know, there's nothing really ever new under the sun. And I know other towns have used this approach. I'm not saying you want to just borrow something. It's got to work for this town, but it's a good way to understand what the options. So there's a town meeting with the select board. We've moved beyond that. We have a town meeting with a manager reporting to the select board. We're like one step up from the basic form of municipal government. And then there's probably the big leap, which is into the town council form of government. And that can be with a manager, or it can be with a manager and a mayor. I want to be clear, I'm not making any recommendations. I'm just giving an overview of what's out there. You can peruse the up and down the coast and see which towns have a traditional select board versus a council. Starting from the very south, Kittery has a council. Elliott, a smaller town, has a select board. Ogunquit has a select board. Wells has a select board. Kennebunk has a select board. Biddeford has a council. Orchard has a council. Cape Elizabeth has a council. Scarborough has a council. So you can kind of go around and see how they've done it in other towns. So there is a point where a town grows to a certain size that some people believe it's appropriate to change the style of the government into a different style of government, but I'm not taking a position on that. What are the topics typically covered by a charter? Well, you've no doubt read your own charter, but it's all sorts of possible things that could be in the charter. Of course, they have to be all legal, and there is this big thing in the statute that says that before you do anything, you have to get a letter from a lawyer saying it's legal. I suppose you could shop that letter and get a lawyer to say something about anything. But maybe I'm getting a little cynical in my own old age here. But it is written right into the statute that you're supposed to have any revised charter revisions blessed by an attorney. But the contents of the charter could include things like board responsibilities, ethics policy, recall procedure, if any, status of appointed or elected officials. I mean, there's any number of things that could possibly be in there. And that is what is then discussed at the Charter Commission. So let me talk about that a little bit. Also was in your materials was how the commission works. There's a vote, a town meeting vote to have a charter commission. If that passes, at the same time of the vote to have a charter commission, there's a vote on 6 members of the charter to be members of the charter commission. I think obviously more than 6 people could run, and it'd be the top vote getters would be on the charter commission. The board of selectmen, select board, can have appoint 3 members. Only 1 member can be a municipal officer. And then, so you've impaneled the Charter Commission, and it's got some pretty strict time frames that it's supposed to work, and this is in the statute. 30 days, they have to have an organizational meeting, a public meeting to receive information, views, and comments relating to its functions. 9 months, they're supposed to prepare a preliminary report with their recommendations. 12 months shall issue its final, the commission shall issue its final report. But there is something buried in there that says that municipal officers, you can extend the period for the permission, for the preparation of the preliminary and final report up to 24 months after the election if the extension is necessary, A, to properly complete the reports, have them printed or circulated, or obtain a written opinion from an attorney. So you got to have a good reason to extend for up to the 24 months. There is the separate process, which I said about the amendments, and this is a slightly different process, and I don't think there's any need for me to explain that, but it's all there in Title 30A. So that's my basic elevator speech about what charter revision process is like. Here as a facilitator to answer any questions as best I can. Mr. Ward.
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, one thing, I don't know if it's still true or not, but when you impanel a charter commission, you don't have any, we can't dictate any particular form of charter that comes out of that commission.
That's correct.
They can produce anything they want.
That is correct. I mean,
And is that different from a revision?
Well, the Charter Commission, it comes into effect with revisions, not amendments. And if you had an amendment, that's you as a board. Minor, almost like cleanups, in essence, you can do as a board with a town meeting vote. But once you pick the three people, they could, advocate something you didn't expect, and you have no control of that. I suppose there's a process that you could interview them and discuss that with them. You'd interview them in a public meeting before you appointed them. So,
Lisa?
So I know, like, with the comp plan, they hire experts to consult on that. Do charter commissions hire experts to speak to them about different forms of government or different things to include, et cetera?
I think it's different than a comp plan, and zoning is a very precise. Zoning and comprehensive plans is very precise, and again, there's another very precise statute. I think you could get advice from your attorney. You could obviously do your own research on your own. Talk to people if you wanted to in other towns and gather information about what they say works or doesn't work in their town. But typically, I'm not used to seeing a consultant, like a charter consultant. I don't know who that would be, but I think that's your question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I could get that job as a charter consultant too.
Other questions from the board? Bill, you have one?
I have a question. In your experience dealing with different towns, have you seen a method that has been successful in revising the charter and updating it?
You mean the form of government that's been successful, or the process?
No, the process.
Okay. Well, I've got another town going. I won't name the name of the town, but this town has appointed a charter commission that seems to have a lot of cohesion and teamwork. I'm not saying that they're all on the same page, but they seem to work together well, and they've worked really hard on it, and they've looked all over the state for ideas. So I think you're as good as the people that are on the team, and maybe there's some team building stuff that could happen. Mike has always ideas about that could happen before the commission would kick off about how to for them to work together and hopefully form a consensus. Of course, you never have a complete consensus these days. I mean, people always disagree about something, but I think it's pretty basic. Is are they capable of functioning as a group?
I think on the flip side, I've been following Portland's charter,
Yes.
and that's been pretty contentious, but very interesting. It's been very interesting to follow, in my opinion.
It's been really interesting, and particularly about the mayor thing and what's the power of the mayor. It seems to be where they have a lot of push and pull. They had 20 former mayors show up saying the mayor shouldn't be powerful, and they all signed a letter. What happened was that the board, everybody, they rotated who was the mayor, basically. Oh, you're the mayor this year, or for 2 years, and you become the mayor. It was a pretty much by the end of your tenure, everybody was the mayor, as opposed to, I think like the mayor of Boston, or obviously the mayor of New York. That's a much, bigger job. And in Portland, it was getting into issues about the salary of the mayor and the power of the mayor, and they had a big, run in between the mayor and the city manager. There's a lot around that, and both are gone now, but.
So, Dorwood, you have a long-standing relationship with the town. I believe you're a resident here,
I am, yes.
And so I'd be interested in your thoughts on where Kennebunk stands or stacks up in terms of our current form of government and what may be in the future for us.
I think that you're right on the brink, or maybe you're beyond the brink. Beyond the brink, sounds right. You're beyond the kind of the area where you would typically have a select board. I think you'd be a good candidate for a council, but obviously there's got to be strong consensus in favor of that. I think the town attorney, Natalie, had said something to the effect one time that you're probably the smallest town with that she knows of with
The largest.
the largest with a select board. Is that right?
So can you describe the differences, what we would see change between a select board and a town council? What
Yeah.
sort of
so
things
the
would?
vote of the council would, you would have much more power in approving budgets and appointed officials, and there would be a lot more power over monetary things, and also over other things that the town does, policy-making things, as opposed to the town meeting. I mean, you do have a certain amount of significant power now, but this would be more power, and the idea of it is that with the greater power is greater efficiency. I mean, people could disagree with that, say it's not efficient or it's not fair, but that's the thought process. That the town meeting form of government is a lovely thing. New England specializes in it, but it's very unique to New England, and we are the most local state. I think upstate New York is pretty local, but the number of towns, and it's you think about all of the duplication that goes on, but the council would streamline the power and centralize the power with the board more than the town meeting, requiring referendum votes on things.
Now, we could modify the typical council form. There is no prescribed council form of government, so we could make up our own.
Yes, you could.
And we could, for instance, reserve to the voters the right to approve the budget.
Yes, you could.
So we could, in essence, make an interim step between town meeting and town council form of government.
You're given a lot of leeway in terms of what you select based on the concept of home rule power. You've heard that term many times. Home rule power is a major function of the main constitution of your local authority, and so you can customize that. And I'm sure we could find models for that, or invent your own, I should say.
Now, when I know you're helping another town, you've shared that with me, and I won't say who it is. But how do you approach that? Do you start from scratch, or do you strip the existing document down to its bare bones and rebuild? What's the best practice in terms of revising a charter?
Well, typically the attorney isn't there every step of the way on that, but I think logically it makes sense to start with basically going line by line with the current and start gathering notes and discussion points of what is good and what isn't good, and then move from there. But there's obviously some meeting facilitation that needs to occur there. I do worry in any group that you can get down a lot of rabbit holes and get lost, and the days can turn into months turn into years. Sounds like up to 2 years here. But that's if you have a strong an effective chair, I think that's a big piece of it, and people again who are committed to working efficiently and fairly. Obviously the public has to have significant input on this, and it will of course have the final say at the vote. It's quite possible the Charter Commission could come up with it thought was a fantastic document, and it goes down in flames.
So, in addition to an attorney, what other sort of resources are typically needed by a Charter Commission?
I think that the Charter Commission, well, there's actually something in the statute. You're supposed to give them an office, and you're supposed to give them $100, and at least $100. So the resources, they should have the ability to hire an attorney, have money for out-of-pocket expenses. I think the old days of printing and things, that's probably what the $100 was. But it actually says in the statute $100. And I don't know if we're in the days of an office anymore, if that really makes any sense, but it does say that.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe there's some other consultant, back to Ms. Pratt's question, maybe like a former town manager, something like that could come in and make a presentation of what they've seen. Someone like Mike, who's been in a number of towns, he could get some perspective. I'm not saying Mike, but somebody like Mike could do that. But pretty much it's a homegrown, self-created process.
Okay. And what does the term codification mean to you, with respect to the ultimate output?
Okay, the codification is taking the work product and putting it into words and making sure those words all work together correctly. When I say codification, I'm talking about making sure the syntax, the paragraphing, the grammar, everything works well, and then it gets codified in a document, then is voted on. That's the way I understand the term codification. It's hopefully as thorough as possible, not leaving much to imagination. Includes definitions. It's as state of the art as possible. But that the goal, the end product is a newly codified charter, newly revised, codified charter. Just like you codify all sorts of things. You codify zoning ordinance or personnel policy, not a policy, but other ordinances that the town would have, a noise ordinance or any number of things.
Questions from the board before we turn it over to the, yes, Mike? Oh, yes, Sally.
I was just going to say, can you pick and choose what in the charter you want to revise?
Absolutely.
So, okay.
I mean, this is, this sounds sort of simplistic, but it is your town, and you can. We don't want to have something that's inconsistent, and that on one hand it says this is supposed to happen, and the other place it says that. And sometimes that happens when you cut and paste. I've seen that happen. I've even seen ordinances where there's a name of another town in the ordinance. I mean, that's really bad. That's really bad cut and pasting. That's a lawyer gotcha game when you so what I say an ordinance has been, or a charter that's been amended too many times or revised too many times. What is it? A camel is a horse put together by committee. I mean, it's got so many rough edges to it. It doesn't flow, and this is an opportunity for it to flow and work. And hopefully, somebody or more than one person on the commission enjoys that type of writing and wording. If not, there are resources for that.
Mike?
Durwood, thinking, and I know there's no clear answer, but as we think about this process and if it were advanced, any idea budgetarily what the community might be looking at from the engagement of legal services throughout potentially a 2-year span, the essential aspect of keeping very clear minutes, all of that. In your experience, have you any ballpark realm of what we might be looking at as we think about next year's budgeting process?
Great question, and frankly, I don't have a good sense about that, but I assume there would be a recording secretary or somebody that did keep the minutes, and that's usually outsourced. Well, somebody on the board does it. I'm not sure you do it that way. As far as the legal goes, I don't think you're looking at a large legal bill. I think you're looking at, like in the $5,000 range. Maybe 5 to 10. Depends on how many minutes. How many meetings the attorney is asked to attend, and how deep it gets. We work by the hour at a reduced rate for municipalities, of course, but it sort of depends on how it plays out. Some towns are much more willing to engage legal counsel and really want legal counsel there a lot. Other towns are like, we'll call you. We got your number. We'll call you when we need you. So you're gonna have to. The board's or the commission would have to work that out, how much legal they would want. If the lawyer was there every meeting and they met 20 times, you can do the math on that. It'd be a lot more than $10,000.
Thank you.
Lisa?
And then how does the process work when you have the commission? So they post agendas and they post minutes. Is the public allowed to attend?
Yeah, these are all open meetings, and I don't know if they're all streamed or not, but they're recorded, and so people can have the right to look at them. They can attend them in person. If we go back to Zoom, they can watch on Zoom. Hopefully that won't happen, but they are entitled to attend. That doesn't mean that at every meeting the public is allowed to participate. Boards, as you know, have different views on that. Some take a pretty liberal view that at every meeting, if people made the effort to show up and they got a question, we're going to let them speak. We kind of owe that to them. Others say, well, we're going to have a public hearing on this in 6 weeks or something like that, and that'll be your chance to talk.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question. If you allow public comment, or you go through the public hearing process, or you could do both, I guess. if you-
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And obviously you can there's ways of limiting the time for discussion. But the board is going to have to feel its way on that. And I think those are the type of topics that should be discussed early on, at the initial meeting almost. Like, how often are we going to meet? What's our format going to be? Are we going to do our own work for a while and then allow the public input?
Thank you, Durward. Anyone else before we open to the public comment? Yes, please. You can stand up. Yep.
Hi, Susan Bloomfield. I had a couple questions, one of which was answered. Does the public have say along the way? It sounds from the description that there's a lot of background research that would have to be done if an individual on the commission is charged with looking up governance in similar towns. That would be something that they would be doing on their own time. Is that permitted, or does all of the work of the commission have to be done in the sunshine? And my other question is, what sort of timeline would we be talking about if the commission were to leave the select board model behind for another type of model, a council or a mayor or something? How much time does it take, or is that something that the commission determines, between ending one form of Kennebunk's government for a new form?
Oh, thank you. You're talking about a transition period between one and
Exactly
another.
right.
Durward?
Question first. I tell boards, like a planning board, to be careful about doing your own research. And if you're doing your own research, you need to disclose what your research is. But this is a little different. You're allowed to check things out. I think that's what the workshops are for, to say, while I was away for the last 2 weeks, I read 20 charters, and here's the ones I thought were really good, here's the ones I thought were poor, here's something in between. That's totally fine. And so there is homework involved in this position. As far as the process, statute talks about these time frames, and I went through that. But there is an implementation time. For example, if you look at the current charter, in 2009, it was approved, the revision was approved in January 2009 and was effective July 1st, 2009. So it's just like a 6-month, it ties to the year, the fiscal year, I assume.
Okay. Other questions from the public? Yes, Chris?
Chris Babcock. I read the document and just wanted to ask if the 6 elected members of the committee are a hard and fast 6 as specified by a statute. I think it was like that's what it typically is, as I read it. And if it's not like a hard and fast 6, who is the determinator of the 6 and also the 3 appointees?
Thank you, Chris. Like that shirt, by the way. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Okay, so under the Title 30A membership, a charter commission will consist of several voters in the community elected under paragraph A. 3 members appointed by the municipal officers. 6 voter members are elected in the same manner as the municipal officers, except that these may be elected at large and without party designations. So my reading of that is, it says 6, it means 6, you gotta have 6.
Okay. Other members of the public? John, please.
more a comment than a question. I will run this to ground if you would like, but my memory is that the cost of the, I think 8-9, I always get the year wrong, Charter Commission, I believe it was budgeted for 20,000. We went a drop over and had to come with our little paws stretched out, as a resident of the time noted, for a little extra. And qualitatively, we had what I would call a fairly high level of attorney involvement from Bill Dell, from Jensen Baird, and a lot of rework of the legal, where stuff came back from the attorney and we're like, not quite, could you do this again? Just to give some dimension to that number. And that, that was nearly 15 years ago. But I'll
That was before GoFundMe. You could have raised the money. Yeah.
I'm sure the taxpayers would have preferred. And if you'd like, I can run the number to ground. I'm pretty sure I have pretty exhaustive records.
Did you have a comment you wanted to make, or?
Just wanted to supply that number.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Other questions from or comments from the public? What you making there, Brenda? Is that a hat? Thank you. It looks very nice. It's probably the wrong season right now, but I'm sure you're getting ready for the coming winter. I'm amazed watching it grow as we go through this meeting. Before we go further, Derwent, I'm going to ask Merton, you had something you wanted to speak to about the issue of changing from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. I thought you had some new information on that.
A couple of meetings ago, I did leave the board astray, and Lisa asked her question about the total number of voters that needed to be in order for it to become effective. What we're talking about is the vote June 14th for making it gender neutral. So forget what I did tell you, this is the truth, what I'm about to tell you, is that it's 30% of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election. So the total of the yes and no votes have to be 1,995.
Or the vote is nullified, in a sense.
Correct.
It's
Yep.
nullity. Okay.
And also, just to let you know, is that going back, recently I've had to go back 10 or 15 or years on some town meeting records, and I was surprised to see at least twice where charter commissions have been turned down by the voters. And the other problem that happens with the election of the 6 charter commission members, I don't think any of them that I saw that you ever had 6 candidates. I think one of them there were only 3, so that left 3 seats that were write-ins, and in one of them there were like 212 write-in votes for charter commissioners. So I think that the board and the town has to do some education on how people have to take out nominations to become a member of the commission, so that we don't run into that.
Thank you, Martin. Anything else? No. Any other comments from the public? Thoughts from the board before we move on here? So I will say I'm a fan of the town meeting form of government. Actually, our form of government is town meeting, Board of Selectmen, soon to be Select Board, town manager. So that's the actual town government under Article 1, Section 1.02, and that contemplates a power sharing arrangement between those 3 entities. In moments where I grow weary of being a part of this, and there are those moments. In general, somebody asked me today, they say, are you happy or sad that you were a select board member? And I say happy, and it's a great honor. I've said that in public many times, but there are those moments, and in those moments I have this cheeky thought of how we could run our town by SurveyMonkey, where we would basically create a list of questions to submit on a weekly basis to the legislative body as a ongoing plebiscite. But of course, that would never work, and I'm sure that Durwood would find that legally offensive. But Durwood, I guess we're at, you've educated us, and we're stunned into silence.
Yeah, the codification of the Survey Monkey is problematic. And the write-ins, I think that's when Santa Claus gets a lot of votes on. Oh, you don't have to. We can talk about that outside the meeting.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, Durwood?
No, I don't. I stand ready, willing, and able to assist as you go forward if you want. If not,
okay.
No hard feelings, and we'll just let it play out.
We appreciate it, Durwood. Last call here. Anyone? Oh, Bill. There we go.
Well, this is a very serious thing, and I want to make sure that we, before we jump on the bandwagon and get the thing rolling, I think we want to make sure we remember two things. One, once we impanel such a board, we cannot guarantee the outcome. It's not like saying, well, we'll just fix one or two sections of the charter and call it good. You may get a charter back that looks nothing at all like what you had. You may think that maybe doing this would bring us to and take us out of our present form of government and make us all, and go to a town council form of government, and yet you may not get that back from your. So like I said, I want us to all be mindful of that as we move forward into this. There are certainly issues with the charter that certainly could be fixed. Obviously, they would require more advanced fixing than we are capable of doing on this board, and even through a vote. So it's something that it should be done, but we want to weigh the pros and cons carefully before we move forward.
I think the main concern, I know Shiloh and I have often talked about this, the town meeting, Board of Selectmen, town manager form of government is not nimble. It's somewhat ponderous, and so there's a prolonged period of time that is prescribed by the charter that makes it difficult to move quickly. And I know that there are some members of the board who are very frustrated that we can't act in a little more rapid fashion. Shiloh calls that a feature and not a bug, and I say, well, there were plenty of features in Windows 98, but that we don't consider those. And by the way, the town government by SurveyMonkey is trademark pending, so just anyone else? John, I have a question for you, seeing as how you were, John Costin? Yep, please. If you're willing. Just curious, when you went through this process back in 2008, 2009, or whatever the relevant time frame, I think you've said as early as 2007 was when it started. Do you think people ended up surprised by the outcome of your efforts?
Yes.
To
Listen,
2007 or?
You're no, don't pin me down on the date because I'm beyond that. Yes, I think people were very surprised. And by the way, before I continue answering, I'm happy to do a Ask Me Anything about that particular Charter Revision Commission. Durwood is the expert on the general case and many specific ones, and I know a little bit about that one, just having been there. Lots of surprises. The received wisdom from MMA, as I recall, is charter commissions happen because people have particular things they want to see changed. Turns out different people have different particular things that they want to see changed, and they all kind of come together in a room, and that's when it gets interesting. So yeah, I think if you asked any one person who was a strong advocate for that, did you get, let's say, more, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, than you bargained for? I think they would say yeah, because other people had different things that they were bringing to it.
May I ask a question?
Please.
John, how were the people, the commissioners from the community, how were they picked?
As Durward specified, 6 elected, 3 appointed by the board. My memory is that we did have more than 6 on the ballot.
You actually ran
Yes.
to be on this, okay.
They were, yes. As was mentioned, as any other municipal official, if you were running for select board or
Okay,
school board.
thank you.
Anything else I can say about
I'm
the
sure
specifics of-
we're going to turn to you often.
I would be more than happy to share my experience.
Yeah.
I have all the minutes, all the notes, quite a few emails. I don't have the invoices, but I'm pretty sure that I do have the bottom dollar figure, and I'll run that down. It just as something that we can, inflate by 100% or whatever we think we should do as well. Looked at prices, so yeah.
Multiplied by the Avogadro number or something. So we appreciate your availability to answer the questions for us. And Susan? Can you turn the mic on there, please? Yeah. Nope. There you go.
A question of personal interest. I understand the 6 members being elected by the town. What kind of person, what type of person would be selected by the board? Based on interest or nepotism, or what would be what would be the distinction between people elected by the town and then people chosen by the board of
Well,
selectmen?
that calls for a lot of speculation, but somebody like you, for example.
But what would be the difference between?
No, the board gets to choose 3 people at random, one of which can be only one of which can be a municipal officer. We're municipal officers, which suggests that a select board member could be appointed by the board to serve on the commission, and then there are 2 or 3 others that could be appointed, and there is no criteria. It would be made up at the time, I suppose.
And how would you all decide on your 2 chosen people? Would you have would you request names of people who would be interested in for your selection as opposed to those who would be elected?
I don't know. It's something we could figure out at the time. I don't have any prejudice one way or the other. I think we would go through the same selection process that we go through when we appoint members of the water district or the KLPD or there are a whole lot of ways that we could do it.
But you would have to know who would be interested.
Sure, absolutely.
So there would be a public call for your chosen folks.
That might be the way we do it. We might do it the way we do for committee assignments. We might put out a call for interested parties and go through an interview process in camera and make a decision on that basis.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Good, thank you.
perfect. Anyone else? Wow, look how early it is. What am I going to do with myself? Without further ado, I don't think, Mike, do you have anything else?
I don't, thank you.
Martin, anything else? Durward? Anyone else? I'm going to let you do this, Frank, because you seem to like to vote against adjourning, so.
You don't have to.
We don't? Oh, that's right, we're in a workshop, hooray. All I have to say is good night. All right, thank you.
Arrivederci.